Okay guys, we're going ahead and finishing up the fuel return, which has been long awaited. It's been the one thing holding me back from turning up the boost on this guy. So just to kind of show you where I'm at, I do have a fitting coming right off of my fuel rail here. This had already been previously tapped for my infinity fuel pressure sensor. So what I've done is I've just put a new barbed fitting on here, which I'll use my hose. I got some PTFE hose, which we will connect over here. I'm going to mount the fuel pressure regulator right off the intake manifold. Just use some self-tappers right onto the side of that. And we will then be able to take the fuel down. So I'm going to go ahead and mount up the fuel pressure regulator real quickly. Alright, so we have the Fuel Lab fuel pressure regulator with a Titan Motorsports gauge on it. So the way I'm gonna need to mount this, I didn't realize it until I'd gotten everything all mocked up on here. And by the way, I have two gauges on here. One obviously manual gauge for setting the fuel pressure regulator, and then the second location right here, which I'm going to tie in the fuel pressure sensor. So mounting this, I'm going to mount it right here. I did have to tilt the gauge just a little bit. It'll actually make it a little easier for me to see. That way the gauge is not touching the slave cylinder, or pardon me, the master cylinder. So let's go ahead and get this guy mounted up. So I got the fuel pressure regulator mounted. It actually, from a just visual reference, gives you a nice perfect look at the fuel pressure. So assuming that works good. Now I need to tap in a vacuum reference for the boost right here. Tapping in for my fuel pressure vacuum. And I am going to go ahead and just use the line off the back of the intake manifold here that I used for my boost gauge on the inside of the car. So got my T in there. Just going to go ahead and connect this end to the T, zip tie everything, and we'll have vacuum reference. Alright, next up, just to show you where we're at, I have the fuel pressure regulator mounted, vacuum lines connected. I have the fuel gauge as well as my fuel sensor connected. Although I'm really not super happy with this, I'll most likely redo this little setup here, but for now, that is how I'm going to rock it. Need to secure my sensor, and then I do have the fuel return tapped, running tight into the regulator. So next step now is to run the return line, which is just a swivel 90 down here. You can see that. Okay, gonna run the PTFE hose down, just running flush with my stock fuel lines, and then I hope to bring it up to the return area. So I'm gonna get some light in here and then get this cap opened up. So disconnected the sensor on top. To connect the pressurized fuel line, you pop this tab back and you can disconnect this. Recommend opening your gas cap to relieve some of the pressure, and then the rest of it is gonna come out with the fitting. Let me show you where I'm at. Pull this cover off. I have pull the screw out. Last screw. I have everything removed from the top hat. I'm getting ready to pull this out of the tank. But first, what I want to do with the fuel line in place and kind of knowing where my clearances are, I'm going to see where the best place for me to put this barbed fitting for the fuel return. And honestly, it's looking like right here is going to be my best opportunity. We'll see what it looks like underneath the cap. So I have my fuel pump assembly out of the vehicle. Got the Deechworks 340 still rocking great in there. and I've marked with this black dot, it's actually a little hole I kind of drilled, where I'm going to be putting the fuel return, which will work out really nice for this hat. It'll drain right through this empty kind of space right here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark and drill that and get rolling. So I got my hole drilled in the top hat, and I'm in the process of just literally threading this fitting right into the top hat. It's threading in just perfectly with the bit I had, and then we'll secure it in place. So you can see it's just nice taut thread. Here is the semi-finished product. Basically what I did is, you saw me put this fitting through the cap here. I went ahead and sealed it with some thread sealant and then some it's like an oil resistant sealer, like some gray Permatex. Then I have an outlet hose here just so that the fuel return's not like pouring down on the pump in there, the Deechworks 340 pump. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this back in. Should be pretty easy. Alright guys, today we are finishing up the fuel system in the car, and one thing that I need to do, since I now have my fuel return plumbed into the top hat of my fuel pump, is I need to disconnect my factory fuel pressure regulator, which is this right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this line right here from the jet tube. And I'm going to go ahead and pinch off and seal this regulator shut so that my new regulator will be able to modulate the pressure. So what I'm going to be doing is pinching this fuel pressure regulator hose off. But just to make sure I do get it fully sealed, I'm actually going to take some JB Weld and just go ahead and fill this up really well. And when I seal that up, I'll let it dry really well, and that should cure and create us a watertight seal. So we can see that I've gone ahead and pinched off the fuel pressure regulator. I've gone ahead as well as filled the entire thing with JB Weld so that that will no longer let fuel pressure bleed out like it needs to, and we can let our fuel pressure regulator in the engine bay do the work. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back in the car and see if our fix works. Alright, now that I have the pump carefully back in place, just make sure when you're fitting your pump back in there that you are making sure the float does not impede on anything, so that your gas gauge works correctly, and make sure that the filter bag got set nice and flat toward the bottom of the tank so it does inlet properly. So next is we're going to go ahead and connect the top of the fuel outlet as well as the fuel return. Okay, we got the fuel system, fuel return all complete. So I've checked for leaks. I actually did have a leak down at the bottom of the regulator itself. I just need to snug that fitting down a little bit. Obviously, getting ready to set my fuel pressure. To do that, you're going to want to block off vacuum, which I've done with this clamp, to the regulator. You can go ahead and just get fuel pressure started by starting the vehicle, and then we can go ahead and manually adjust the fuel pressure. I'll show you that. Alright, sorry it's so loud, but I'm going to show you how I set the fuel pressure. So I have the vacuum blocked off. You can see when you decrease or increase pressure on this screw, you add more pressure. So I'm going to set it to about 45, which is what is recommended for factory. the back. Let's see. Looks like it's working. So awesome. All we need to do is get this thing tuned. We're gonna be looking good. Fuel pressure solved. All right, guys, thanks for hanging with me. I'm so excited to finally be able to get parts for this beast once again. As you guys saw, we just finished up the fuel system. I have the fuel pressure preliminarily set at 45 PSI and then rising rate from there. So I do need to get a retune. So reaching out to a couple tuners that I know. Hopefully be able to get in contact with one I think a few of us might know from some other videos. And then, yeah, I got a ton of progress waiting for the car. As you guys saw, we got the rims on there. I rolled these fenders quite a bit. I wonder what we could be rolling the fenders a bit for. But anyways, got some angle coming, hydro e-brake, and many, many, many more things. So thank you for staying with me, C3 Garage Media. It's 2019. The IS is about to enter version 2.0. I'm out. Like and subscribe for more.